PayPal co-founder Peter Thiel recently spoke at the Bitcoin 2022 conference. He gave the keynote speech. It's about 26 minutes long. We're going to dive into it now. Peter Thiel, he's over at Founders Fund now, investing in a bunch of cool technologies. He also wrote 0 to 1, which is an epic book. The things he says, the things he writes about, he really makes you think. I always appreciate his thoughts on things. You can argue about his politics. You can't really argue with his success, and argue with the fact that he's been right on some fundamental things and made some epic fundamental bets as a venture capitalist. Very always interested in what he has to say. So I'm going to do a reaction video. We're going to listen to this guy, and I'm just going to pause it. We're going to listen to it together. We're going to riff on it, and we're going to see how this goes. So let's have some fun, and let's fucking dive into this.
Dollars to electronic dollars. I think the basic technology is going to take place on the internet. I think the specific platform in the emerging world is going to be on a cell phone platform. If you look at the numbers, there are about 360 million, about 150 million online desktop-based accounts today. That number is projected to grow to about 350 million in the next 5 years. However, with respect to cell phones, internet-enabled cell phones, they're just getting rolled out right now. They already have some significant penetration in Japan, in Finland, in Sweden. They're getting rolled out in Western Europe, the US next year. The numbers are projected to grow from about 10 million internet-enabled cell phones today to about 1 billion in 5 years. In 5 years from now, everybody who is a member of the middle class in the emerging world and in the developed world will have an internet-enabled cell phone. And this sort of a cell, in China, the number is projected to go to something like 300 million cell phones, most of which will be internet-enabled. These people will have access to their bank accounts, and it will be very easy for them to move money into an account in a safe jurisdiction where the banks are not politically controlled, and they will basically be able to completely dollarize the economy. There will be no need to have any rubles or renminbi, and it will be non-traceable. No matter how illegal the Chinese Communist government says it is to hold US dollars, you will have a password on your cell phone, and the only way to stop this process would be literally to shut down the telecommunications network. And that's the kind of choice governments like China, India, some of these other countries are going to face. They will either have to shut down the telecommunications network and make it illegal for you to own a cell phone, or they will have to basically give up the kind of monetary sovereignty they've had and the enormous power that they've been able to wield as a result of this kind of sovereignty over the last many years.
Okay, that was epic. So I think a couple of the things. So first of all, I don't know what year that was from. It must have been from when there were a billion cell phones. Damn, was that 2007 when the iPhone came out? I don't know. This was like 15 years ago, something like that. Internet-enabled cell phones. So maybe that was even earlier. Maybe that was like early 2000s. That was said. Late 90s. Shit, I don't know. But that definitely came to pass. There's many more than a billion cell phones right now. So that's totally spot on, especially in the developing world. Cell phones are a huge deal. They just skip desktop, they skip PC, they skip laptop, they went straight to cell phones, and that was absolutely a pressure point. I think it's interesting that I think people overestimated, and this is a great example. Hindsight's 2020. There's no way to know. Obviously, a bunch of Chinese citizens don't just own the dollar, right? Right now, like they don't have an account that they can just set up and easily have dollars, and the Chinese government cannot stop them. He said that they would literally have to shut down the telecommunications network and make cell phones illegal to prevent this. I think people underestimated the ability for autocratic regimes, for dictators to use the internet and make themselves more powerful using it. I mean, as Snowden says, cell phone is a dictator's dream come true. It's a mic and a tracking device. It's always with you. It's absolutely incredible. So the internet, and Bill Clinton said this when we opened up to China, brought them into the economy. Said, and with the internet, he said it's like, what did he say? It's like hanging balloons with I don't know. He had some euphemism or something, and he was just saying, once that China gets connected to the internet, they won't be able to stop the free flow of information off the shit. Well, the Great Firewall, I think people underestimate the Great Firewall of China. It's actually, for the most part, I mean, It's working. Yes, there are people that know how to use VPNs in China and get around some of this stuff, but for the most part, I mean, that certainly didn't come true. You can't just easily set up an account and have dollars, and the Chinese government doesn't know anything about it. That did not happen. I think people underestimate the ability to block individual apps, block individual websites. I mean, look at Facebook's blocked, Google's services are blocked. The Chinese market is not open to the West. The Western market is open to Chinese companies. Look at TikTok. Look at Shein. How do you pronounce that? I have no idea. It's the fashion app. But yeah, so that's an interesting take. I think I would have certainly thought that way. I'm going to turn the gain down a bit. I would have certainly thought that way, honestly. Oh, connecting to the internet solves everything. Well, not exactly. And in fact, it actually, some would argue, can actually do the opposite. They can actually monitor everything everyone is saying at all times, monitor your data. I mean, look at Apple, for example, in China. They are partnered with a state-run cloud company, and they store all your data, so they can view everything. All iPhone users in China, they can view everything, no question. So I think that was a little optimistic, and I think that's why he's going to come and probably say, like, hey, Bitcoin solves this. U.S. dollar, he thought, I think, was going to be because PayPal obviously was using U.S. dollars, is digitizing U.S. dollars. Now Bitcoin, I don't think we're seeing a lot of people in China right now use Bitcoin. So anyway, I'm going to stop talking. Let's dive in and see what this guy has to say. Ready? Boom. Hey, people clapping. Here we go, Peter.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me here. It's, there's so much I was wrong about in 1999, but I thought I'd reflect on some of the things I was thinking at the time, give some perspective on what it means for the world today of 2022. And when I was running PayPal, when I was getting it started, the standard way I'd start an investor pitch I'd hold up several $100 bills and would always get people's attention. It's kind of hypnotic, even though, it's really weird. What is this? I mean, it's probably not very good as toilet paper. It's not good as wallpaper. It's sort of this crappy fiat money. It's a very mysterious thing. What is money? Is it a network effect? Would the gentleman in the front row like to have the money? Just somebody come up and get it. But I don't know how to throw it out at people. I thought you guys were supposed to be Bitcoin maximalists, And so this is like it's like kind of crazy that this stuff still works, But when we were starting PayPal, we knew nothing about money, about banking, about payments, about any of this stuff. It was sort of all thought of from first principles. We probably got a lot very wrong. I'll mention the two slides that describe.
So I want to say something quickly because Elon Musk was just pictured with Peter Thiel there. He helped PayPal, I believe this is accurate, acquired X.com, which was another digital banking service that Elon Musk started. Peter Thiel acquired it, then they went into business together. And I heard on an interview recently with, I forgot who Elon was speaking to, I think Lex Friedman podcast, he was talking about what is money. And I never really thought about it. People say, oh, you buy things with it, right? But he said something more fundamental than that. Money is actually a way, I was riffing with Sawyer about this today. Money is actually a way to determine, it's a way to determine who gets to control resources. That's what it is, straight up. It's a way to allocate resources. So if you start a company and it does really well, you gain basically credits to control more resources. Now you can buy a house with that, you can buy a car, you can buy a purse, you can buy all this fancy shit, or you can control human labor. You can control you can build an office building, you can start a company, you can build new things, you can actually, society has said you get to allocate more resources because you allocated resources well in the past. Because you start a company that's successful, now you get to, it's like votes. It's votes on where the resources go. That's all it is. And then the other side of that is things need to have a price, right? Because they need to have a price because we need to accurately reflect the cost of things. If everything was super cheap, everything was free, then the people that needed those super highly valuable resources Anyone would get it. An idiot like me would get it. I would get I don't know, what's a highly valuable resource. Oh, let's say I could just have all the oil and hoard it, and then I know what to do with it, and then boom, and it was super cheap, and I could buy all of it for a penny. Well, the first person put the order in would get all the oil, and boom, then where would be? Oh, well, there's a price to it, and the people that can afford the most of it, that can allocate resources against it and use it, they have money, so it costs something, right? So it's a way to think about people who say, "Oh, I have money." It's just a way to allocate resources. That's all. Fundamentally, that's what it is. I'm curious what Peter Thiel says, but Elon Musk was riffing on that, and I think that's super, super interesting. Let's go on.
What we thought we were doing. This is the PayPal February 1999 seed round pitch. We were going to replace. We said the U.S. Treasury. We actually meant the central bank. We didn't know the difference between the two. But it was going to be sort of a closed-loop system, a new form of money, new network effect, electronic 21st century version of money. By 2002, at the time of the IPO, the PayPal business model looked like a funnel, where the money went in and out fast. And it was a payment system. And I wanted to just start that those two pictures, a closed network versus a funnel, are two very different pictures. In some ways, this was a more practical business, but it was a decline. It was much less ambitious. Money goes in and out super fast. And I think one of the ways to think about all of these different things, this is not a perspective I had at the time, but if you think about these different forms that money can take, you can have forms of money that are high velocity, where it moves super fast, but then you don't actually need that much in the form that it has. It's just like maybe an accounting device or something like that. And if you have forms of money that are intrinsically low velocity, then the quantity you need is much, much greater. And it's this inverse relationship that goes across many different forms of money. And so the PayPal 1999 was a closed loop where you'd have this enormous store of value that gets built up. The PayPal 2002 was sort of a high velocity loop. And this is, of course, also analogous to something like gold bullion is store of value, low velocity money. It moves once, every few decades in a central bank vault. Visa, super high velocity, moves trillions of dollars a year, but Visa itself doesn't need to have very much money on its own. And I think one of the reasons people always get these two different modalities confused, and they're like radically different kinds of products, is that when we think of money, we are still always just thinking of the $100 bill that I presented you at the beginning. And physical cash it's sort of the one very weird form of money that's actually sort of intermediate velocity and intermediate value. It's not really great at either. You can store money in a piggy bank, physical cash. You store it in a mattress. That's getting pretty weird. You can maybe use it to buy, pay for a restaurant or club, maybe a used car. Probably gets hard to use physical cash to buy for a house. So it's sort of both. It's not that great at either payments or store of value, but it's in between. And because we always think of physical cash when we think of money, we tend to think store of value and sort of high velocity things are the same, even though in practice, most things are at these two opposite ends of the spectrum. And then, I want to obviously suggest that, Bitcoin and Ethereum are at these two extreme opposite ends of the spectrum. Bitcoin, store of value, gold replacement. Ethereum, if it works, is going to be sort of the super high velocity, fast moving thing. And the thing that's sort of, I would say, fundamentally honest about Bitcoin is that we are just at this one, sort of low velocity, high value end of the spectrum. And then if you look at something like Ethereum, you will say that it's high velocity, it's going to be sort of a frictionless payment system, but then it's also going to have incredible amounts of intrinsic value. And there's probably something about all those things that doesn't quite add up. So if this is, by the way, I took this slide from Vitalik himself. So this was.
First of all, I love all the Bitcoin neckbeards at this conference. The Bitcoin maximalists are like, they don't know whether to clap. They don't know whether Peter Thiel's dogging Ethereum or like if he's if he's supporting it, and then they see this, and it's a. Oh yeah, if you listen to the audio only version of this on the podcast, I should describe. So he's showing a image of a dude wearing a MAGA hat with a gun, and then it shows another picture of Vitalik like wearing a purple jumpsuit, looking super soft, and below that is ETH. So it's showing the differences between these. So Vitalik had an epic post called "In Defense of Bitcoin Maximalism," which was kind of an April Fool's post, but also had a lot of really cool insights. So this is hilarious.
And there's sort of a question: how do we compare and contrast them? And so if we look at the current market caps, 830 billion versus 386 billion of Ethereum, but if we map Bitcoin onto gold and Ethereum onto Visa, well, Ethereum's worth roughly as much as Visa, so it's fairly valued. If you have a seamless, frictionless payment system, it's worth $400 billion. As it works, the gas fees have to go down. It has to become completely frictionless to work. And then, whereas gold is 12 trillion, and if Bitcoin is going to...
Well, the gas fees don't necessarily need to come down. There's other solutions like layer 2 solutions that you can build on top of Ethereum. So Ethereum gas could theoretically be the same, and then you build solutions on top of it for actually frictionless payment, faster payments. So
to replace gold, the question is really, why is it so undervalued? What is it going to take for it to go up to the 10x? And I'm going to close on that a little bit later. We can, so there sort of are all these different ways Bitcoin is going to has every potential to replace gold. Question is why it has not done so yet. Now, I think if we take one step further back, we can even ask a question: why is gold worth $12 trillion? How much should all the gold in the world be worth? And if we look at, say, the 1970s, gold did remarkably well, and stocks were kind of a crappy investment, and it's sort of very different from today. So if you look at all the gold in the world today versus all the publicly traded equities in the world today, it's about 12 trillion of gold, 115 trillion of equities, roughly a 10-to-1 ratio. If you look at sort of the peak of the bull market in the late 70s, early 80s, where gold peaked at about $850 an ounce in nominal dollars. At the time, all the gold in the world was worth about 2.5 trillion. All the publicly traded equities were worth 2.5 trillion, and the ratio was actually 1-to-1. And so one of the questions you have to ask is,
wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, why is the ratio 10-to-1? Why can't it be 1-to-1? Maybe it should be 100-to-1. It can be all over the map. What defines these kinds of ratios? And I would say sort of one simple version is that in the 1970s, cash was trash, bonds were trash, but equities were pretty bad investments as well, because in an inflationary world, in a high regulation, high inflation, high tax world, the effective capital gains tax rate goes well north of 100%, because you don't set the basis on equities, you don't adjust it to inflation, and so equities become an extraordinarily bad investment. In the world of the 2010s, gold did pretty well, Bitcoin did extremely well, but the real competitor for Bitcoin is not Ethereum. That's a payment system. It's not even gold. It's something like the S&P 500. It's the stock market as a whole, and this is the way Bitcoin trades every day. If the stocks go up, Bitcoin goes up. Now it's like a highly levered Nasdaq stock on a day-to-day basis, and that is sort of, in a sense, the real competitor. And the question is whether we're headed towards a kind of 1970s style world where it's higher inflation, more regulation, and even being, you don't want to be in a stock or bond, but even being, you don't want to be in cash or bond, but even being in a stock, you're effectively in something that's like a government-linked entity. Companies, woke companies, are sort of quasi-controlled by the government in a way that Bitcoin never will be. And in that sort of a world, I would submit that perhaps the way we should think of the Bitcoin to equity ratio, the benchmark for Bitcoin is not gold, but equities. And the question is, why can't there be parity between Bitcoin and equities? Why shouldn't we be talking about something more like 100 to 1? Which of course won't be as good as it sounds, because the fiat money will be worth a lot less and it'll be taxed pretty heavily and whatnot. But I think, I'm still hopeful that if Bitcoin goes up by a factor of 100, you'll make some money, a modest amount of money, in real terms. Now, there are sort of, at the very minimum, what I think, it's always hard to know where Bitcoin goes from here. It's $43,000 today. Where does it go?
Quickly, yeah, this is interesting. I've never thought of Bitcoin and compared it. I've always compared it to gold myself, so this is why I like listening to Peter. I've never even thought about that. I will say, the high regulation, high tax. Wow. Okay, here we go. Well, that's kind of not chill. Hold on here. I just had a little bit of a... Okay. Damn. Okay, I'm going to keep... That was super dark. So I had a trial of this service called Loopback, and it just biffed on me. It's the first time I've used it because I'm doing this screen share recording thing. So let's just see if we can get the speakers here. Output to the speakers, and let's see if we can keep this going.
What I'd like to say is that Bitcoin is always the most honest market in the world.
Okay, so we're going to keep this. We're just going to keep rolling with it. So I'm not going to be sharing the screen anymore. Or maybe I could, actually. I don't really know what to do here. Okay, well, we're going to keep going. So if you're watching on YouTube, this thing's just going to get biffed. There's going to be no video. That's all good. I'm going to put the mic up to my laptop speaker. We're just going to roll with it. Okay, so he has a chart. Oh, yeah, so anyway, I've never compared Bitcoin to equities. It's never even really occurred to me that they were the same thing. I've always compared it to gold, or just, store of value. Yeah, so that's an interesting way to look at it. But in terms of saying the 1970s, this is where I was. In terms of saying the 1970s, high regulation, high tax. Yeah, so they had parity then, but then look what happened. Over the next 40 years, equities exploded, and gold remained a fraction of it. 1 to 100? I think the ratio became something like that. For me, anytime I'm investing in anything, I'm mostly in just index funds, S&P 500, total stock market index on Vanguard. That's where most of my investments are. Anything I do invest in, though, with a substantial amount, I do invest in some individual stocks. That's mostly because I support the companies. I don't check them on a day-to-day basis. I don't think I'm going to beat the market over the long term. But any of my other investments, like the way I view my crypto investments, is, okay, let's wake up in 40 years. I don't have a 10-year time horizon. So if I don't care if the next 10 years Bitcoin reaches, well, first of all, it goes up 100x, I'll certainly sell some. That would be fucking ludicrous. But I'm more concerned, what are we doing in 40 years? Because if it goes up in the next 10 years and then equities still explode, well, then equity was the better investment over the long term, over those 40 years. So I don't really care over the next 10 years, but of course, if it explodes, yeah, sure, I'll sell short term. But that's not really the way I look at it, personally. Okay, now he's telling us about he has a chart BTC tried to tell us, and you know what? Bear with me. I'm going to get a new screen recording. Let's just see if we can do this here. We're going to do microphone. We're going to do MacBook Pro microphone. We're going to record. Okay, now we're recording him. Okay, so let's fucking rip this. Let's keep watching this. So hopefully, maybe I'll edit this. Depending on how I edit this, maybe I'll put the video back. Anyway, we're learning here. We're doing this. Let's keep moving.
It's the most efficient market, and it was the canary in the coal mine. It was telling us that the inflation was coming in the last 2 years as it went from 6,000 up by a factor of 10x. It is telling us that the central banks are bankrupt, that we are at the end of the fiat money regime, and that's sort of what it has.
Okay, and he's showing a graph of as the price of BTC has gone up since March 2020 to January 2022, the price of BTC has gone up. He's showing that inflation has also gone up, and pretty close. They're pretty closely linked. So as he says, fiat money is. It's very easy to say, Bitcoin, that's the future, and fiat money's dog shit. Take a look quickly. And Matt Levine of Money Stuff, I think he's a great Fuka newsletter. So I was reading some of his stuff about what I think the title of his newsletter was "Russia's Money is Gone." This was early on when Russia invaded Ukraine, and central banks, their assets were frozen. 600 billion in overseas foreign currencies just frozen. And Matt Levine was making the point that people were saying some extreme stuff. I know Nick Carter, he's a Bitcoin guy on Twitter. I think he's got some good thoughts. He's a bit of a maxi in my mind. I think he'd be honored to hear me say that, though he doesn't give a shit what I think. But he's like, yeah, see this. He said, look, proves it. They can freeze your money. Call it done. Like, they can freeze it. It's over. So we should move to Bitcoin. That's it. So here's the deal. I actually think it's good. The world is coming together. Russia's doing something evil, and money is just it's a societal thing. It's a society agrees that, okay, this is worth something. We're going to transact with it. Bada bing, bada boom. The U.S. dollar is the standard, and society as a whole said, okay, this person can't spend their money. Also, if we were all in Bitcoin, we would just blacklist Russia's wallet addresses, right? Like, I don't think Bitcoin solves that either. So even if it was all Bitcoin, we'd just say, okay, we don't want to Bitcoin. We don't want to use Russia's. We can still sanction them. We couldn't take their Bitcoin. Sure, they would have it, but we'd say, okay, you can't trade with anyone. You can't buy anything. So what good is their Bitcoin if they can't buy it? They can have it in the future, but they can't do it. Maybe they could give it to some regimes. They could still trade it with China, perhaps. Though China's been a little lukewarm, they still haven't stood up to them. That's why they will not be the world hegemon. I'm very, very short China long term. I don't think they got a good few decades ahead of them. I think, that's a podcast for. I riff on that all the time, and I rip on China all the time. Xi Jinping's a thug. Let's continue. I don't think. I honestly forgot where I was going with that. But yeah, you use Bitcoin, that doesn't solve it either. So I don't think that, but I actually think it's good that we're able to freeze the assets of Russia. That's a good thing. It's a societal thing. Society's coming together and saying, no, bad Russia. We're gonna fuck with your shit. Now, I think there should be, what we saw in Canada was people were protesting. They were freezing their bank accounts. That's not how you deal with that. You don't just freeze people's assets without due process. So that's the other extreme, and that's a very real possibility, and that's something that we should always think about. But the U.S. ain't doing that, and maybe they'll do it in the future, sure. I think it's I think it's a feature, not a bug, that Russia could just get. And like I said, I don't think Bitcoin solves that. Okay, let's continue.
Is priced in. I think the central bankers, Mr. Powell, people like that, should be extremely grateful to Bitcoin, because it's the last warning they're going to get. They've chosen to ignore it, and they will have to pay the consequences for that.
Another thing I want to point out, that, and I was reading a lot about this on the U.S. Treasury, the central bank website. They were given updates when COVID was first hitting the fan. There was all these things that the U.S. Treasury was doing, or the central bank was doing, like swap lines and all this shit that was helping liquidity with the global system. They were doing all this shit to keep this system on the rails. Now, there's a reason we don't use gold, because you can't just print gold, and you can't keep the economy going when shit hits the fan. We've tried this. We were on the gold standard, and now there's a way to use fiat money poorly and have 10,000% inflation, absolutely. But there's also drawbacks to. There's a reason we're just not all on gold, the gold standard, because there's things you can't do. And the reason that the U.S. dollar is, people trust it, countries can trust it. That's why it's the most dominant currency. But also, there's things that our bank does, or did with other central banks. We worked with them. there's all these things way over my head. I don't exactly know what was going on, but there's a lot of things. It's not just like, oh, here's dollars, we printed more, that's it. There's all these different levers that were pulled to make sure that we were being a good steward of our currency as the world hegemon. Let's continue.
In the years ahead. But let me come back to this question. Why has Bitcoin not yet gone to 100,000 to $1 million of Bitcoin? Why has it not yet converged with gold, or even with the equity markets more broadly? And what is going to, what is it going to take for this to happen? And I know that sort of the ways we often talk about businesses or technologies is, how great the technology is, how great the code is, how great the math is, how it's sort of innovative. But I want to sort of suggest that we should maybe think of it at least in one dimension as sort of a political question, and it's a movement, and it's a political question whether this movement is going to succeed, or whether the enemies of the movement are going to succeed in stopping us. And so I want to maybe end with an enemies list, a list of people who I think are stopping Bitcoin. And they all have, many of them have, there's sort of a lot of them, they tend to have this sort of nameless, faceless bureaucrat perspective, which is of course one of the ways they hide. But we're gonna try to expose them and realize that this is sort of what we have to fight for Bitcoin to go 10x or 100x from here. So enemy number one. I think he's sort of. I think the sort of the sociopathic grandpa from Omaha is perhaps the most honest and the most direct in it, and you have to sort of think of it's of course on some level these people aren't always just talking their book. It's sort of they have some sort of institutional bias. It's long, a list of woke companies. It's somehow long this fiat money system, and of course there's always a sense if you're a money manager, you want to pretend that it's complicated to invest, and if all you have to do is buy Bitcoin, that's like ridiculous. All these people are.
Okay, so slow down, Peter Thiel. So Warren Buffett's obviously a total legend. I respect him coming straight at him. Warren Buffett famously says, compliment, specifically, criticize generally, so don't call people's individual names out. That's a safe approach. I respect Peter Thiel coming right at him. He's not coming at him, personally, call him, an old grandpa, whatever. That's fine. He's coming at his ideas. To say that Warren Buffett, say, oh, well, money managers want to make it seem like it's complicated. Well, Warren Buffett, it's very different. It's very different to just say that Warren Buffett is just trying to make money, as if he's investing in businesses. Yes, he's trying to make money, but it's not as if he's not like, oh, I'll put it all in Bitcoin because that'll make me more. He looks at businesses. Bitcoin is not a business, right? This guy is famous for over time choosing businesses, investing in them, buying them whole, and letting them do their thing. That's served him well. That's why he's one of the richest people in the world, and that's a very different thing. So I think it's a bit of a low blow. Let's continue.
Or out of business. It's there was a version of this also with gold. They never liked gold either, because if all you had to do was own gold, that's something everybody could.
Yeah, Peter Beaster. If you just owned gold the last 3 decades, S&P 500 absolutely kicked its ass. And gold, Warren Buffett has said that if aliens looked at what we did with gold, we bury it, we dig it up from the ground, then we put it in safes, and then just don't do anything with it. They like, what are they doing? That's ridiculous. Yeah, it's true. It's interesting. The thing with gold, it doesn't. A business creates value. It does something, and it has cash flow. So it's a very different thing, and that's why long term, like 1,000 years from now, for example, businesses will still be businesses. That won't go away. Investing in people, it is. I don't ever see a world. I mean, this could happen 10,000 years from now when you can just who knows, but value will always be created through business. That is the most value. That's why people say, "Oh, invest in real estate, invest in gold." I'm not interested in that shit at all. Yes, sometimes it beats the equities for a short period of time, but over the long term, the things that create the most value are businesses that are actually doing something and selling something. If you buy real estate, you're just expecting, you can develop real estate and do all that shit. Sure, that's different. But if you're just buying it and then hoping that the next person will buy it from you for a higher price than you bought it for in 10 years, the land isn't doing anything. It's not creating a product. It doesn't have customers. Sure, you can develop it, like I said, but that's kind of a different thing. Yeah, buying gold, similar thing. Like, so, but let's keep chugging, Peter.
Can do. But there is something. There's sort of an institutional bias, a sort of a center-left political bias. There's of course the New York City banker bias.
Jamie Dimon. I don't call them cryptocurrencies. I call them crypto tokens because currencies have rules of law behind them. Central banks and tax authorities, worthless. Jamie Dimon, also the big banks. I don't really have respect for them as businesses. They're fat banks. It's a super regulated industry. They're not going to go anywhere. Yeah, sure. Some of them went under. Some of them got bailed out. But it's not a very competitive market. I think Bank of America is still going to be here. J.P. Morgan is still going to be here in 50 years. And if you just know a company's still going to be around 50 years, you got to wonder, is the industry that they're in, is it so regulated there's not enough competition there? Jamie Dimon, I don't really, not personally my bag of people I look up to. That's not that interesting to me. It's not creating a technology, not creating a new thing. He's got to be a people manager. I'm sure he's, total hard ass and can think clearly. That's something, but that's not, okay. That's cool. But he's not creating new technology, not doing anything that cool. So I'm like, let's continue.
J.P. Morgan, you can get quotes like this from any number of these people.
Also, he dogged it while his bank was, but his bank is actually creating a crypto trading desk. I think they're doing shit around crypto because their clients want it. So it's kind of funny that he said this and now he's kind of walked statements like this back. So it's kind of been interesting to watch.
And then I would say, another one, even more obscure, Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, where, if you have these sort of large institutional investors, they need to be allocating some of their money to Bitcoin. When they manage state pension funds in the U.S. or they get trillions of dollars in assets, when they choose not to allocate to Bitcoin, that is a deeply political choice, and we need to be pushing back on them. We need to say, you have to get on board on this. And the Larry Fink quote is sort of representative, I think, of a whole genre of anti-Bitcoin things where, and you have to always put it in some context, but pro-blockchain is an anti-Bitcoin term, very typically. So it's like, I love the blockchain, but, not so sure about this Bitcoin, don't need Bitcoin, we can move on to the blockchain, move along, this is not, not the currency you're looking for, move along. But if we sort of combine all of these things, I would sort of put the label on the.
So ESG, Larry Fink, few years ago, famously, kind of put out a treatise that said, ESG is the thing, environmental, social, and governance investing. He's really going to start offering products. He's going to push people to push his clients to invest in ESG. But ESG, I've always been very skeptical of it. Matt Levine's skeptical of it. I tweeted about this recently, but I don't want a bunch of suits telling me what they think is good. That doesn't. A bunch of suits in Wall Street, virtue signaling, we should invest in these companies and not these companies. No. The way the lever to pull if you think a company's doing evil is regulation, is voting people into office, is government. That's the lever you pull. You don't invest your money that way. That's why I'm total stock market index fund. It's not political. I'm just buying the market. Okay, obviously I don't want companies to do illegal shit and sell drugs, for example, if you can sell meth and have a company. But yeah, companies aren't allowed to sell meth. And don't at me with the pharmaceutical company. Yeah, okay. Well, you get my point. Like, if you're just selling meth in a vending machine, that is illegal. Okay. And yeah, it's illegal. So my money is not going to be allocated towards it. Okay, it's allocated toward fossil fuel companies. Are those evil? Well, I think the invasion of Russia has shown that it's not evil. We need energy independence. We need oil. Europe has not invested in their own oil production, and now what? While Russia is committing war crimes in Ukraine, they're still buying their natural gas. So look where that's getting them. Defense companies. Oh, defense companies are evil. Okay, there's no society without defense. So is that not a good? We shouldn't invest in defense companies. And then governance is like you determine. Oh, this company has good governance. Like for example, Berkshire Hathaway is not in a lot of ESG funds because it's basically controlled by Warren Buffett, and that's not fair. It's like, okay, I don't need to, I don't need a bunch of suits telling me what to invest in. And if you want to invest, the one area where I'd say, okay, you want to invest in clean tech and like make that, just then buy a clean tech ETF. Okay, allocate some shit there. I have some in there, but the bulk of my wealth is not in there. So it's just in index funds. Let's continue.
The sort of, on the sort of, the label they've come up with, and perhaps the real enemy is ESG. And which, it's always sort of unclear what it means. You might think of it as not charitable for me to sort of name some enemies here, but I think that ESG is just a hate factory. It's a factory for naming enemies, and we should not be allowing them to do that. Or that, of course, you can sort of always ask the question.
Okay, Beast, when you say we should not be allowing them to do that, first of all, they can do whatever they want. Yeah, sure, you can create funds that, or ETFs or, mutual funds that only invest in, ESG. Sure, if that's your bag, you have the freedom to do that. But I ain't going to support it. I ain't put my money there, I'll tell you that.
What's the difference between ESG and CCP, the Chinese Communist Party? They are into social and governance. Environmental is sort of fake. It's probably also fake in a lot of these cases. But I always think when you think ESG, you should be thinking CCP.
I love that. So this is actually a clip that I saw before I watched this. It's the first time I'm watching this, but I saw that clip, and I think it's a hyping hot take. Sure, CCP, ESG, hate factory. Sure, okay, I buy it.
And there's some degree. It's been a surprise. ESG has been surprisingly inclusive. Basically, as far as I can tell, the only things that are sort of not liked are some of the carbon industries, and then Bitcoin. And it's because most of the other companies, they are subject to political control, especially when your companies go public. I always advise CEOs when they take their companies public. There's some good things. You get liquidity. You can, the early investors can cash out. You can get some credibility. But it's basically taking a company public. It's a de facto government takeover where some people who are effectively government bureaucrats became more empowered. It's the CFO, the general counsel, the accountants, the lawyers, the HR people, all these sort of extensions of the state are given more power, and we have to think of ESG as sort of this.
Yeah, sure. I buy that. Okay, damn. See, that's why it's so fun to listen to. I'm not even. Let's just keep riffing on this. Keep going.
Last umbrella thing, and we're sort of one of the great features of Bitcoin, and it's always a question whether it's a bug or a feature, but I would submit that in the sort of more heavy-handed statist world, it is far more of a feature than a bug, is that Bitcoin is not a company. It does not have a board. We do not know who Satoshi is. And in some ways, all these things seemed extreme in the world of the 2010s where, the inflation was low, the regulations were not the worst. And it seems extremely prescient for the world of the 2020s. And if we had to summarize this in one frame, it is It is the finance gerontocracy that runs the country through whatever silly virtue signaling / hate factory term like ESG they have, versus what I would call, what we have to think of as a revolutionary youth movement, and we have to just go out from this conference and take over the world. Thank you very much.
Welcome back. We're here at the Marathon News Desk at Bitcoin 2022,
Okay, I don't need
presented
to hear this guy speak. Yeah. Interesting, Peter. Yeah, I think that was. I'll stop the video now. Yeah. I'll be honest. I thought I was going to get a little bit more juice out of Peter. I think he said some interesting things. I thought we were going to get a little bit more juice out of him. But that's that's epic. I don't really know what I have to add here. I do think, I call it the gerontocracy. I don't even know what that means. I got to look that up. I'm literally just going to look that up right now. Let's see what we got here. Gerontocracy is a form of oligarchical rule in which an entity is ruled by leaders who are significantly older than most of the adult population. Yeah, well, okay, I mean, you can't really argue with that. The average congressperson is super fucking old. It's fucking ludicrous. And I think a lot of the laws actually support the boomers, for example. They're the biggest voting bloc there is. I don't think the millennial group is bigger. Certainly we don't vote as much, so it doesn't matter. But I think there might be more of us when we do get old and actually get to the polls. Get older and get to the polls. But yeah, right now the boomers. So there's, I think, some things that benefit them that aren't necessarily the best things for our country. But yeah, okay, Peter. I respect it. Honestly, in this world of tiptoeing around shit. And like, you don't be careful what you say. Peter Thiel doesn't give a fuck. Like, I'm so sick of Mark Andreessen. I was riffing with Pat Dales about this. Mark Andreessen has been tweeting a lot recently, and just saying shit. Like, and yeah, he's saying kind of a lot of. He's just like, he's a big time investor. He's been tweeting a lot, just like kind of just spraying fire hose. And to me, I'm like. And he's been calling things out, calling organizations out. I'm like, I'm here for it. I'm all here for it. I know he's a smart dude. I'm anyone that can share what's going on in their brain. I'm all for, and I'm not going to cancel anyone for one idea. We are a multitude of ideas and feelings, and we have different opinions. If you can learn to take the good from everyone, or be willing to learn from someone that you completely disagree with. Look at Trump, for example. I use this example all the time. He was right about NATO. He was right about China. The way he went about it, he was right about our NATO allies should spend more. Look at the Ukraine situation. Germany upped their budget overnight. He was right about that. He was a total dick about it, didn't handle it with any tact, and actually pissed on our allies. And then look at China. China's absolutely an evil empire. Well, they're not hardly an empire. They think they are. People think they are. They ain't. They barely got their own shit together. Third of their country had fucking brownouts pretty recently. It's just not. It ain't it. I'm short China, long USA. Yeah, I'm always a fan of people just share your opinions. Yeah, you can ruffle some feathers. Who gives a fuck? We're all trying to figure this out. The more we can talk, and the more the people don't feel like they're gonna get fucking canceled, or if I say this, I'm not saying go say racist shit. I'm just saying let's ruffle some feathers. Let's call people out. Let's say, I think that's healthy, and especially when people are in the public sphere. Like, if you're in the public sphere, or you're like a celebrity, or you're speaking, like, I'm putting my views out here. No one gives a shit about what I have to say, except for the homies. I love you all. Text me if you listened. But it's like, if you're putting yourself out there, I am putting myself out there. If you're putting your ideas out there, I'm sorry, I have no sympathy if something goes viral and you get Twitter mobbed or something like that. First of all, who gives a fuck about a Twitter mob? I'd be honored one day if I got mobbed, but again, no one gives a fuck. But, just, if you're putting your ideas out there, I'm sorry, you should be okay with being attacked. That's the reality. Like, this is how it works, and don't take it personally. And even if they say personal attacks, like, book and move on. Who knows you? Your friends know you. Your family know you. That's what matters in your life. If those people turn on you, you got some serious problems. And if the people turn on you because a mob attacked you or people are coming at you for, bullshit reasons, they know who you are. And if they, turn on you because you're saying shit in the public space that, that they're like, oh wow, maybe I shouldn't be your friend anymore. Then they were never your friend. So I'm just like, let's I'm down, be nice about it, right? Like, I don't think we need to call people old, senile, whatever. I mean, but attack their ideas, attack them hard. There's way too much, I think, tiptoeing around this shit. I think a lot of people are willing to share their ideas directly, but I think there's so many smart people that don't attack. And I'm not saying attack, but just share dissenting ideas. And frankly, I think they want to deal with all the smartest people are in business for the most part, and they have a business to run, and they don't want to fucking waste time fucking sharing opinions and having people attack them. And I would love if every CEO could just get mic'd up every day and or just tweet their opinions, their actual fucking opinions. And we weren't like, oh, they tweeted this. Like, people, yeah, some people are gonna make mistakes, but at least we would know what they're thinking, and we could all have a dialogue. And imagine if every CEO as MP 500 was just tweeting. Like, you might say, oh, that's a nightmare. But it's like, okay, they don't have to tweet all the time. But what if they were just tweeting some of their actual ideas? Many of them do have Twitter accounts, and they're fucking boring. They're bullshit. Because they can't share anything. I don't blame them. They'll get fucking eviscerated. But it's like, I wish more smart people, more wealthy, powerful people, wealthy in the sense of not just wealthy because they built something, not just wealthy because they inherited $1 billion, or you don't really inherit that much. I guess you can, but yeah, it happens sometimes. But I really wish more ideas were shared. I respect Peter Thiel for putting his shit on the line, and I wish there was more of that. I yearn for it. I love Mark Andreessen doing all his tweets. I love people like going out. It's idea warfare out there. That's what it is. It's not personal attacks. It's not, even if it's a personal attack against you, it ain't personal. And it's easy for me to say I've never been mobbed or anything, but it's like, that's even just, they don't know you, bro. Someone doesn't, if only the people that know you, your friends, your family, those are the fucking people that can hurt you. If someone talks shit about you online, it's like, literally, who gives a fuck, dude? Now, if your friend is like, yo, homie, what you said earlier wasn't chill, or like, yo, you disrespect me earlier, and like, we have to talk this out, it's like, okay, yeah, talk it out. I'm not saying be immune to that, but those are the people that matter, not any fucking random people on the internet, or even other non-random people, even people with that are have powerful positions in our world. It's like, let's just share the fucking ideas. I'm begging for truth. I'm begging for real ideas. Part of the reason I think I have, and now I'm just rambling, so if you want to turn this off, that's all chill, but it's part of the reason I think I have this podcast. I'm just like, it's therapeutic. I feel like I can just fucking riff. It's fun. I can just share. I can get my stuff out there, and I'm like, it's like kind of like screaming into a pillow, right? It's like, oh, and it's just like, oh, I can actually get my ideas out there, and I feel like it's fun. I don't feel like I'm constricting what I have to say or have to think about it. I'm not like and that's fucking nice. Partly it's nice. I tell myself, oh, it's nice it's not popular because no one screams at me. I can say whatever I want. It's so nice to say whatever I want. I don't have to think about anything. I don't have to think about anything, but I don't have to think about what the ramifications are, because if this got popular, of course I want it to get more popular, but if it got popular, you think about that, well, then people have flame in the comments. If I say something, it's like, do I really want to deal with that? Does it matter? Anyway, it's just idea warfare. Peter Thiel, thank you. Thank you everyone for listening. This is fun. I just love Fuka doing this. So I'm Dick Lucas. It's No Gradient Podcast. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it wherever podcasts are available. Just search No Gradient. Finding on YouTube's a bit of a bear, but you can find it in, just search No Gradient, Dick Lucas. I don't know. You can't even find it in the search. It's all chill. You can find it in the podcast show notes. I link to the YouTube channel, Facebook, Twitter, Dick C. Lucas, Instagram, Dick C. Lucas. I post a clip on Instagram. I post my clip on Twitter. So every time I post an episode, I post the first 50 seconds or so you know what the episode's about. So if you want to listen, great. If not, still listen. Throw me the download, dude. Come on, throw me the thumbs up, bro. Don't be like that. Throw me the sub. Okay, this was fun. This was chill. Peter Thiel, thank you for your service. You're a beast. And we outie, baby.